I reckon you were born for this team leader role because it's the perfect combined events challenge. You've got the history as an athlete, you've got the understanding of other athletes as a coach, and now you're in the main role. There's so many ingredients to your job.
Yeah, there is, and the main ingredient obviously is ensuring that selection policy caters for all. So we have to marry up performance and development, and it's important that we get that right.
And I get the feeling with this specifically, you're all about clarity and transparency because you're making a concerted effort to be as clear as you possibly can. You don't want there to be any room for doubt or misinterpretation whatsoever.
I think one of the most important things about a selection policy is how clear and concise it is. And previously, maybe there's been questions that have come from a selection policy. I want to make sure that I tackle those questions, ensure that the athletes and coaches are clear about what it takes to qualify for Birmingham 2022. And I also want to be as transparent as possible. So, you know, being communicative as often as possible and being there to ask and answer questions is important to me.
Right, so from an athlete's point of view and a coach's perspective, the most important question is the most basic one. When can an athlete qualify?
So the qualification period is from the 1st of January 2021 to the 12th of June 2022.
So does that mean that the team is chosen on the 13th of June?
So what will happen is after the 12th of June, on the 13th of June, a selection panel will convene and we'll look at everybody who's qualified within that period of hitting the standard, and then we will then nominate a team to Commonwealth Games England on that day.
So how long after that will successful athletes actually be told they are definitively part of the England team for the Commonwealth Games?
So the process is we will advise athletes by the 14th of June that they've been nominated to Commonwealth Games England for selection, and then we have an appeals process in between that. And by the 21st of June of 2022 is when we will ratify the team for nomination to Commonwealth Games England. And after ratification from Commonwealth Games England, then the team will be announced when England Athletics and Commonwealth Games England decide. So probably within that week.
Some of the best races I've commentated on at the Com Games involve the para-athletes. What's the selection procedure for them?
So there's something different with the para-athletics events. Their qualification period opens on the 31st of December 2020 and it closes on the 31st of December 2021. The difference is they have an invitation from the Commonwealth Games Federation, which will come through in January, February of 2022. And from then on, we will accept every invitation that the Commonwealth Games Federation sends us.
So does that mean then that para-athletes would definitively know probably by the end of Feb in 22?
Yeah, so we're hoping to inform every para-athlete by the end of February of 2022. So they'll have a lot more time to prepare, which is brilliant and it's advantageous for them and us, obviously. So we can work with them those 6 months leading into the game. So yeah, they will get to be the first team members of Team England for track and field.
OK, so we know that there isn't a specific one-off trial event for athletes for anything other than the marathon, which we'll come on to in a moment. So how do they qualify?
So England Athletics has set a number of standards for every event that will be at the Games. It's important that the athletes get as many standards as possible. There's lots of different factors how we'll select an athlete. They'll be based upon Commonwealth Games ranking at the time of selection, which is the 13th of June 2022. It'll also look at their consistency performances and their head-to-heads against other athletes in their event. And there's also other factors that may come into play.
OK, so you've mentioned as many qualification times or distances, jumps, throws as possible. How many to be on the table for selection? Is it 2? Is it 4? Or is it just as many as possible? What's the minimum number?
In an ideal world, we want athletes to qualify every time they step on the track. To be selected in round 1, you need to have at least 2 qualification standards, but also be very highly ranked, if not at the top of the Commonwealth Games ranking at the date that we do the selection meeting.
OK, that all seems pretty clear and straightforward for the track and field athletes. So what about the stamina boys and girls then? How do the marathon runners make it?
We thought it was really important that we give the marathon runners the most time to prepare. So we're going to hold a trial event at the London Marathon on the 24th of April 2022, where the first man and first woman in the elite races will automatically be selected for Team England.
Okay, what happens then, for instance, if an athlete runs an absolute blinder in this forthcoming autumn's London Marathon, but is injured for some reason for April 2022? Will their London Marathon from this year count for qualification in 2022?
Should there be any athletes who run the qualification standard and then we feel that they're medal potential for the Games in 22, we will also select them at that point. But I must stress that no qualification times for the marathon will be accepted after April the 24th, 2022.
You've said one of your criteria for selection is current form. What is the time window for that?
So current form is from the 1st of January of 2022 to the 12th of June 2022. And it's important for us because it gives athletes a longer opportunity to qualify, but also within the year of competition. So it brings in the indoor and outdoor seasons. Because there's not a lot of outdoor season to gain a qualification standard, we felt it was important to bring in the indoor season to give every athlete the chance to perform and to gain more qualification standards.
The first thing every single athlete is going to do when they look at this selection policy is go straight to the performance they need to produce in their own event. How have you come up with those specific heights, distances and times?
So what we've done is looked over what it takes to win a medal over numerous games over the last 30 years and judge what it takes to win a medal, what it takes to come top 5, what it takes to make a final. And from those statistics, we've come up with these standards, which we hope will then at least give athletes an opportunity. If they're hitting these standards, they're in with a chance of making the final and also a medal.
Well, another very important but basic question, how many athletes can you pick per event?
So we're able to pick 3 athletes per event, but obviously this is subject to confirmation of our team size, which we'll get in due course from Commonwealth Games England.
You and I both know there's so much emotion attached to an athlete being selected, or otherwise, inevitably, there will be some who want to appeal a decision they don't like. How do they do that?
There is an appeals policy that will be attached to the main selection policy. And it's really, really important that athletes read that appeals policy before they then do an appeal.
If anyone watches this and reads the selection policy but still wants further clarification on something, who should they contact?
So we have a great team that have pulled together this selection policy, and we have somebody within each area. So we have Shani Palmer, who's in charge of speed. We have Spencer DeVal in charge of endurance, Darren Ritchie in charge of jumps and combined events, and Nick Ridgeon, who's in charge of throws. So they can be contacted at any time through their email address or phone. Subsequently, there is an email address within the policy. Should there really be any questions regarding the policy itself, they can direct that question there and we'll answer that. We'll also have a number of webinars for each area of the sport where we'll be addressing questions and concerns, not just regarding the policy, but also the lead up to the Games. I feel it's really important that we communicate this clearly and concisely, because there's always questions around how you're selected and what the processes are. And we want to be there as much as possible to communicate what is the case and how the selection policy best fits these people.